Hey there, so you're an EdD student, and you're staring down the barrel of your theoretical framework. I get it. It can feel like wading into a huge, complicated battlefield of ideas. Well, you're in exactly the right place. We're going to take a journey through the entire field of curriculum theory, and my goal is to give you a map to navigate it. Okay, let's jump right in.
Here's our game plan. We're going to start with the basics. What are we even talking about when we say curriculum theory? Then we'll dive into the history, these foundational debates that really shaped everything. We'll look at the how-to model that took over for decades, and then we'll see how it all came crashing down. After that, we'll map out the modern landscape of theories that you can actually use, which brings us to the final, most important part: how all of this helps you build your framework.
All right, first things first. What is curriculum theory? Right away, we have to get this idea out of our heads that is just about what subjects are taught in school. It goes so much deeper than that.
And to get to that deeper meaning, we have to start with this seemingly simple question. But trust me, the answer is what unlocks this entire field. What do we actually mean by curriculum?
And this right here is the fundamental split. Most people think of curriculum as a thing, right? A textbook, a syllabus, a list of classes. But in academia, we see it as something alive. It's a cultural text that sends messages. It's a political conversation about what's important. And for every single student, it is a deeply personal, lived experience.
This quote from Pinar really nails it. What he's saying is that curriculum theory isn't just about studying schools. It's about studying the language we use to think and talk about schools. That language doesn't just describe reality, it actually creates it. The words we choose literally shape what a school is and what it can be.
So, how did we get here? Well, this field was not born in a quiet library. It was forged in the fire of some really intense arguments about the entire purpose of education in America. It was a battle of big, conflicting ideas.
You can see the main battle lines right here on this timeline. You start in 1828 with the Yale Report, which was this big defense of the old-school classical curriculum. Fast forward to 1893, the Committee of 10 basically tried to lock that classical approach in for high schools. But then boom, 1918, Franklin Bobbitt shows up with a completely different scientific vision that just turned the whole conversation on its head.
And this table really breaks down those clashing worldviews. On one side, you have faculty psychology. Their metaphor was the mind is a muscle. The whole point of school was to train that muscle with tough subjects. Then, in a totally different corner, you have Bobbitt's social efficiency, where the school is a factory. Its job is to efficiently produce workers for the economy. And then, pushing back against both, you have John Dewey's progressivism, saying, hold on, school isn't a factory or a gym. It's a community. Education is about living right now.
So with all these different philosophies fighting it out, things were, well, they were messy. And out of that chaos came this really strong urge for a clean, simple, systematic way to do things, a kind of instruction manual for curriculum.
And the man who wrote that manual was Ralph Tyler. In 1949, he published this little book that was about to become the most influential text in the field for a generation. His whole goal was to step away from the philosophical food fights and just create a logical, neutral rationale that anybody could use.
And here it is, the famous Tyler rationale. It's just 4 simple questions. What's your goal? What experiences will get you there? How do you organize them? And how do you know if it worked? It's so logical, so linear, you can see the appeal, right? It felt like a recipe. It seemed completely scientific and, importantly, apolitical. It was the ultimate how-to guide.
For decades, the Tyler rationale was king. But then, the 1960s hit. With the civil rights movement, the Vietnam War, all of this massive social change, suddenly this clean technical model started to feel completely out of touch. A storm was brewing.
And here's the lightning strike. In 1969, Joseph Schwab gets up and calls the entire field moribund. I mean, that's a heavy word. It means dead or dying. His point was that everyone was so obsessed with the how of curriculum that they had completely forgotten to ask about the urgent, messy political realities shaping students' lives. Schwab's speech basically blew the doors open. It unleashed this new wave of thinkers, the reconceptualists, who started asking totally different questions. They said, forget how for a minute. Let's ask why. Why are we teaching this specific history and not another? And the big one, in whose interest does this curriculum actually work? This new way of thinking gave us these incredibly powerful ideas, like the hidden curriculum. The idea here is that what's written in the lesson plan is only a small part of what kids learn. The real lessons are in the routines, the rules, the way the classroom is set up, all the unspoken messages about who has power and what's considered normal.
Around the same time, we get this earth-shaking idea from Paulo Freire, banking education. He painted this picture of teachers just depositing information into students' heads as if they were empty piggy banks. And he argued that this isn't a neutral act. It teaches students to be passive and to accept the world as it is, which, he said, just reinforces existing, often oppressive power structures.
So the old model died, but it wasn't replaced by one new thing. Instead, the field exploded into a bunch of different approaches. Today, it's helpful to think of the landscape as a set of different cultures of curriculum. And for your work, you can think of these as different lenses in your toolkit.
Okay, let's look at the first culture. This is the traditionalist view, what we can call connecting to the canon.
At its core, this approach sees curriculum as a way to pass down the very best of what a culture has thought and created. It's about building intellectual discipline and good character by studying the great works of literature, history, and art. The key idea here is that knowledge is a stable, enduring body of truth.
Now, let's swing the pendulum way over to the other side. A completely different culture is focused on developing self and spirit. This is a return to those progressive, child-centered ideas.
And you really can't say it better than John Dewey did right here. For this perspective, education doesn't start with a big book of facts. It starts with the child. It begins with their questions, their experiences, their world. The curriculum has to be built from the learner, not just delivered to them.
And finally, our third culture is openly and proudly political. It's called Confronting the Dominant Order, and it sees curriculum as a potential tool for changing the world.
This lens is the direct heir to the reconceptualists. It looks at the curriculum and asks, how is this maintaining an unjust status quo? Its purpose is to critique inequalities based on class, race, and gender, and to use the classroom to empower students to become agents of change. It's all about what they call liberatory pedagogy.
Okay, so we've gone from the 1800s to today. We've seen the battles, the rise and fall of models, and the current landscape. This brings us right back to where we started, you. How do you take all of this and actually build your framework? Here is the absolute most important thing to remember. Your theoretical framework is not just a chapter you have to get through. It's not just a list of names to cite. It is the lens of your camera. It's what allows you to see. It determines what you notice, what seems important, and ultimately, what questions your research is even capable of asking in the first place.
Think about it. A researcher using a social efficiency lens will see a problem and tell a completely different story than someone using a confronting the dominant order lens. So the question for you isn't which theory is the right one. The real question is this: after seeing this whole journey, what story does your research need to tell? That's what will lead you to your framework.